The defund the police movement is gaining some traction, but its support seems to be coming from desperate voices and politicians because it's not getting support from most Americans. In fact, 80% of Americans favor keeping police funding where it is or even increasing it. But some loud voices are painting all police as bad. Here's what the president of New York City's Police Benevolent Association had to say yesterday.
There's been a message not only from our city hall, but from the State House that says there will be a soft touch. And then for our legislators, and I emphasize our legislators, to then demonize police officers as if we're the problem, as if we broke the window, as if we caused the violence. That is absolutely outrageous.
Joining us now is Aaron Wyth. He's the director of the Freedom Foundation and our panelist of the day, Amy Tarkanian, and Governor Robert McDonnell still with us. Aaron, we played a bit of what was said at the news conference held by the Police Benevolent Association yesterday. Very passionate there and coming out strong against criticism. But what was also said was that there are millions of encounters between NYPD officers and people in New York that are quite successful. And yet some appear to try to make police officers the villains here.
Yeah, and that's what police officers never get credit for, is when they get things right 99.9% of the time. And the problem isn't, we don't need to defund the police. The problem is the police unions protecting bad cops, and government unions, that's their job. Their job is to protect public employees, but there are bad apples and bad players, Derek Chauvin being one of them. What we need to do is we need to be able to fire bad public employees that are not doing their jobs, like bad teachers and incompetent DMV workers, and bad cops. That's the reform that we would advocate for at the Freedom Foundation, certainly not defunding the police.
Yeah, and yet we have heard the calls to defund the police. And some people are saying, well, they really just mean reallocate the funds to different groups or reform the police. But the exact slogan here is defund the police. And Governor, I know when you're leading a state here, you want to look out for those communities that are most vulnerable. You want to take care of the people who need help. How are you able to ensure public safety when you are defunding the police?
Well, Emma, it's something that's not going to happen. It's a crazy overreaction to some legitimate problems of discrimination. You know, facts are stubborn things. We have had last year, I think, depending on what statistics you look at, maybe 25 or so deaths in the hands of police, wrongful deaths because of police brutality. But at the same time, we had 95 law enforcement officers so far this year die in the line of duty. So I understand the police reaction from having everybody labeled as a bad cop because of the murder of George Floyd. I think the answer is, and I think the suggestions you just heard were exactly right. There should be zero tolerance for people that abuse the power of the badge and the gun. They need to be gone. Police unions that protect them and have transfers to other departments or incremental discipline, that's wrong. They need to be gone. But we need to realize that the police power is the essence of what state government does. And without that ability to protect our citizens, we don't perform in the function. There are more African Americans proportionately that are victims of crime than whites, and that's wrong. And we need strong police forces that are just to be able to do their job.
You want these police officers to be doing their jobs. You also want the police officers to feel safe while they're doing their job. Amy,
absolutely.
Exactly. And you know, Amy, when we hear from police officers, yesterday on the program, we heard a spokesperson for NYPD saying that these officers don't feel as though they have the support that they need from the mayor. They don't have government official support backing them. You know, and that's an issue when they're going out on the streets trying to protect us.
Sure. And when we hear our leaders, our political leaders actually use the term defund, and then they try to backpedal because they realize now in the polls it doesn't bode well with Americans. So now they're trying to redefine the word into reallocating funds. That's not what defund means. So they're pulling the wool over our eyes. And I don't blame the NYPD for feeling like they have been left in the middle of the ocean on an island, all on their own. I am incredibly grateful for Metro. I'm incredibly grateful for the times that I've needed to contact them and ask them to help protect me and my family. And I know that there are bad seeds in every industry, but to vilify all police is completely wrong. And to say you're going to defund and dismantle is completely wrong by our legislators. And that's why you're seeing many Democrats backpedal.
Yeah. What's interesting now, though, we've been keeping our eye on what's going on in Capitol Hill, where people are testifying before the House, trying to make some actual change in legislation and police reform. Aaron, bringing you back in, you're with the Freedom Foundation here. We're watching these Democrats and Republicans going back and forth as to trying to maybe come together to find a solution here. If you were to advise them for a bipartisan solution, what would you suggest?
One of the things that we advocate for at the Freedom Foundation is open collective bargaining. So when the union sits across the aisle from government to negotiate contracts for things like police officers, but also teachers and other government employees, those types of negotiations should be open to the public because they should be able to see firsthand what is being negotiated with taxpayer dollars. I believe that's one of the few reforms that should be being talked about here because, as previously mentioned, police officers, they're heroes and they're being attacked by liberal politicians and they're being attacked by rioters on the street today.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we don't want to see. These police officers are out here to protect us. We appreciate you, Aaron With, coming on the program today with the Freedom Foundation to give us your insight, your advice as well. It's always great to hear these different perspectives. Thanks so much for coming on. Of course, Amy and Governor McDonnell, stay with us. We've got a lot more coming up on the program, including this: social media calling for Americans to celebrate Juneteenth instead of the 4th of July. So what could summer celebrations really look like? We'll have more on that when we return.